Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started, y'all. Thanks for coming, everyone. I guess do we even need the mics, or can everyone hear us fine? Okay. You want to do the mics?
I mean, it doesn't matter that much. Like, we can all project pretty well.
Okay, okay. Cool. Well, thanks for being here. And I guess we'll start. So we are all either illustrators or comic artists who have done work for tabletop RPGs in some way or another. And
That's right.
I guess we could go ahead and introduce ourselves and kind of say just a bit about our work.
Yeah, I guess I'm on our left, your right. So I guess I'll start.
But yeah, let's look at some of your work.
Okay, so I'm T. Shirley, also known as Moy Does Art on Blue Sky and Tumblr. I have worked as both a third-party illustrator for tabletop RPGs as well as other independent RPGs. This right here, this illustration right here, in particular, is for a tabletop game called V Killer, which is like a very short-form VTuber themed like tabletop game released by Weird Age Games like about a year ago. No, actually 2 years ago. It was late 2023. That one up there is for Beacon. That is another independent RPG that had a Kickstarter like about 3 years ago. And that is personal art for a cyberpunk game that I was in. So, and so yes, I do a lot of just like independent illustrations and just like commission work online. I have also done I've also done personal comics because I like doing comics. I like action and art. So yeah. Who's next?
You go next.
Am I next?
We'll do Anton.
All right. I'm Anton W. Blake, cartoonist, probably first. This is my main series, Zethia Space Witch, published by Cosmic Lion Productions. I've been reading and making comics for as long as I can remember, and finally came back to it as an actual profession about 6-7 years ago, roughly. I do a lot of mixed media in all of my work, but I also, roughly the same time when I came back to making comics, started playing a lot of TTRPGs, and within 2-3 months of playing and DMing, I was already homebrewing things and eventually creating zines compatible for existing games, and also, I believe the next slide was a brand new rules light TTRPG that I have upstairs called Eat the Lich. It's about a fantasy game about seizing the means of magical production.
Hell yeah.
And very simple kind of thing. But I've also done work for Pirate Borg through Limithron. A few things that I initially did that were 5e compatible, and I'm switching to more like OSR or system neutral-ish kind of thing, so that it's a wider audience for it.
Awesome. Next we have Kennon.
My name is Kennon. I've been a freelance illustrator / animator for about 20 years. Recently, my RPG work has been stuff mainly for old school first edition D&D clones. I've done some work for Goodman Games for Dungeon Crawl Classics. I also worked as a freelance animator. I did work on the TV show Undone, and what was the other one? Apollo 10.5 on Netflix, and Standard Darkly. So yeah, that's I do mainly RPG stuff, cartoon stuff, and I've done a line of self-published books, coloring books, and art books.
Can we go back to the previous slide just to look at the dragon for a second?
Yeah, let's look at that
That's
dragon.
pretty
Luxuriate
spectacular.
over there.
Uh-huh.
I absolutely love the lighting on that
I
thing.
like the shades of red and black.
Yeah, it's
There's the call for the job was to make it look like the old monochrome modules for first edition D&D. So the palette was limited, so it's supposed to be,
Achievement unlocked.
Yeah.
thank you.
Lastly, myself, Jason Poland. I'm maybe a cartoonist first, game illustrator second, but this is a panel or a comic from My Dad is Dracula, bridging the gap here. My dad is Dracula, my dungeon master. Hi son, you're in a tavern. Roll to order an age-appropriate beverage. So there's some dad humor there, and where all adventures start. So I've done work for a lot of kind of casual card games. So the top one is from, if anyone reads the online comic Swords, fantasy comedy about all kinds of magical swords. He released a card game called Swords Cut the Deck. So this is My Dad is Dracula and a Sword. And then down here, Shin and Shin Comics, if anyone's read that, and Jason Anarchy Games released a game called Your Friend is Sad. And so I drew a guest comic here for, you see Dracula there as a turnip. And then this is a map from like a custom game or scenario I made for Hero Quest. So that's sort of a tabletop RPG. It's gotten a recent re-release, heavily inspired by Tolkien's map drawings. And then over here on the side, I've made sort of like fake magic cards of my own characters, because in every comic, Dracula is something else and also a dad. So in this one, he's my dad's Dracula in a save point. I thought it'd be funny to sort of, I loved Magic the Gathering growing up, but I never knew how to play. I just liked the art, so I would just like collect those, and it's in my zeitgeist, I guess. But yeah, I guess from there, are there any initial questions? I guess maybe a good topic to start with is like, would anyone like to share like a formative experience they had with like RPGs or tabletop games that sort of like got them hooked on why you do it now?
Oh, God. Well, I guess I'm the first one to speak, so maybe that means I guess that's me. So, like, I actually tried D&D 3.5 ages ago when I was still in high school, and it was fun, but I didn't really connect with it that hard. It took me a few more years to finally just, like, when I was in the middle of college, right, and I met some online friends who were all really deep into the RPG scene, and they invited me in for like a long-form West Marches game, and that was set in its own just like bespoke setting, where our GM was going into all the depth of this world, the interesting, intricate lore that he had just crafted for this, and that was about the point where I started to just like really understand how these were so special and why they were so special. It was play-by-post, it was in text, but it was still just like the world building, the investment was all there, and more importantly, it was ours. And nobody else could have it. And just like, it was ours, it was our story to craft, and we all just like had our own little part to play in this grander world. That dude's now done stuff for Wizards of the Coast, so that's pretty interesting, I think.
You were literally part of his world building into that career.
Hey, I'm not going to complain about that. That's pretty cool. And that sounds made up, but it's also just like, it doesn't feel real, even though I know it literally is.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Anyone else have a?
Sure. Yeah, I came to TTRPGs late, as I mentioned before. All of the kids that I knew growing up who did play D&D and similar games, like they took it so overly serious that it kind of sucked the fun out of it. So I just never gravitated towards it. And I certainly wish that I had found other types of players back then, because I also had a few like play-by-post things back when forums were still a common kind of thing.
Days.
Yeah.
God, this thing even started on IRC if you want to get all the way there.
Yeah, But once I finally did get to TTRPGs properly, my sister had just started playing 5th edition D&D. I hopped in for a while and quickly needed to start DMing for a new group. And as I was like trying to learn that system and like looking at other games as well, I started immediately thinking like, well, this is not exactly what I'm looking for in various ways. So like clearly that means I need to just start hacking it in my own way and creating like weird, goofy monsters that are never going to be in the monster manual. And so yeah, within the second session of DMing, I had this psychic goat that was just there to really mess with my players, and in more ways than just your typical damage or conditions or whatever, is that like it just read somebody's like memory and of something embarrassing, and they're judging you for it. And what does that do to you when you're in combat? So it was like pretty much just a steady progression from there of deciding, yeah, I need to just keep diving into this. And during the 2020 Inktober, I decided to do a brand new monster for every day for that year's challenge. And then slowly but surely made stats and everything for it, and had that zine for a good while. That's the thing that I am currently converting to a sort of system neutral OSR style thing, because the art always really looked much more like old school sort of games as opposed to like 5th edition or Pathfinder or any of that kind of stuff. So it just kind of right away, once I was already in, I was just off to the races on creating stuff as well.
My turn. So I grew up in middle school and high school. Knew I wanted to be an artist. First, I wanted to be a comic book artist, and then I was heavily influenced by stuff I read back then: X-Men, Fantastic Four. John Byrne was tops, and I grew up playing D&D as well, and I was heavily influenced by the first edition guys, and my art was always lots of heavy lines, and then when I got out of art school, I went to art school for advertising, and don't recommend that, but I got out of school, and that was about the time that Wizards of the Coast bought TSR, and they completely changed the art style, and so the art I wanted to do became irrelevant, so I had to pivot to video games and animation, and so I did that. And so I survived long enough doing that until now the people that are making decisions have money, and so now people are doing the old school stuff, and now I'm getting to do the artwork I've always wanted to do. So yeah, that's my story anyway.
Nice. And yeah, I guess as for me, we'll go to this one, it's more fantasy. I've always loved fantasy stuff, like, I think like a lot of us, I played D&D back in middle school, and it was very like captivating that we were like coming up with the story all together, and it could be really anything we wanted. And I think I really enjoy Hero Quest, and a lot of these systems that do encourage you to create your own content, encourage you to like hack things apart and make it your own. I think at its core, Gary Gygax and all the OG folks encouraged you to like make it whatever you wanted to. There's no like set in stone way to play this. And so I love that, games and tabletop games are so different from like other media, that because they're alive, they're different every single time depending on who's playing them, that it's not like you're illustrating just a standard story or even just illustrating content for a video game. Like, you're kind of creating art that, maybe inspires the kind of play that happens at the table that can really turn into anything. So I guess like when you are working on things like that, like do you, is it mostly like commission based, or do you kind of like draw what you want and you get to see it go out there, or what?
It really just depends. So it's like when I'm in, so for some of the stuff that I've done for like, let's go ahead and go back to my slide. I am very glad you got this together.
Oh, thank you.
So,
Thanks for the slide,
for-
yeah.
yeah, no, it turns out it's pretty nice to have a visual aid when talking about visuals.
Figure.
So, for example, like this right here is actually for a Lancer supplement that my friend and I have been working on for a while. And it's just like, most of the time when I do RPG work, it is for commission, because like most people who have an idea for it have a very clear idea of, well, they don't have a completely clear idea of what they want because they want me to interpret it, but they have an idea of the vibe. They have an idea of the aesthetic that they want. So usually they're going to give me just like some kind of just general guidelines for how it's supposed to look and the emotions it's supposed to evoke, because that's the first thing people are going to see about it, right? But when when it's like I'm also doing some of the lore building and writing, and I'm given more freeform, then I like to just like kind of take an interpretation of that initial idea and bring it to its own form. This is from a Lancer supplement that my friend and I have been putting together for a while now. The general idea was basically just like based on just like fables, right? It's called Grimm and Sons, Grimm and Sons. And just like this particular mech is called the John Henry, because it has a big hammer and it's unstoppable. And it also overheats, because it's the John Henry. So it was just like, how do I interpret that? Well, I made it huge, I made it massive, I made it chunky to imply just like industrialism. And it was just like, it was so much fun to just be allowed to do that, because not only is it a collaborative effort, it's also just like, I'm able to do a little bit of the visual storytelling myself. So, and it's also the first thing people are going to see of this, so this makes them excited to play the supplement. It's fun. It's a lot of fun when you just like get to have that control, because I usually don't get it. And I mean, I love interpreting other people's ideas, but I have ideas of my own, and I like being able to show them. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, similar. Since I've designed my own like full games as well as supplements and worked with other folks with commission, it like has really kind of, I guess, been like the full spectrum of those kinds of experiences. So like last year at last year's Staple, I met a guy, Brandon Butler, who hired me to do art for his Pirate Board supplement, and was very lucky in that he knew exactly what he wanted, but he also wanted to give me enough space to really make it my own and like insert my own little ideas into that. So that whole project was all just strange and like interesting, legendary like ships of the Dark Caribbean, the setting of the game. Say one, the prompt that he had given me was just in the hull, or remains of a hull of a sunk ship, there's a massive crab that has like inserted itself as if it was that like hermit crab's shell, and is now cruising around with skeleton crew on the ship.
Nice.
And pretty much just left me with that, and I had all the choices on exactly how I wanted to portray that, and kind of made it so that you just really see the legs and the claws coming out, and otherwise it's all shrouded in darkness. And since I knew it was this very supernatural thing, it didn't really need sails to be sailing, so instead of sails I just put a fishing net, because I imagine that would probably have also been part of the detritus on the bottom of the seabed. And I would send him pencils for that before going any further, and he was very on board for all of that. So It's definitely a dream commission sort of scenario. I've certainly had other commission work that it's a bit harder to like really get exactly what they're looking for out of them. It takes a few emails back and forth and possibly a few like thumbnail iterations,
Yeah,
sketches.
because a lot of them aren't really visual artists themselves, so
Mhm.
they need you to just like kind of guide them towards what they're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah, something that I have found is helpful in that regard, though, is that when we're negotiating on like rates for commissions, I'll tell them like I'll built into the price like a certain percentage of like tweaks to the image, but if it is a substantial like change that I would have to do late after inks are already done or anything like that, then it's going to cost them extra. So, and when I'm negotiating that, I explicitly state that like if you give me like as much information to go off of so that I know truly what you're going for, then that can help mitigate that sort of thing, and that has for the most part been successful.
I think my favorite of those is just like when someone gives you a kind of just like a very amateurish MS Paint scribble, and it's just like, oh, thank you for telling me exactly what you want. I don't care if it's bad. It
Yeah.
helps. It helps.
Truly, yeah, it truly does.
The bar napkin, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It,
Yeah.
it
I
just,
have clients that will apologize for their rough sketch, and I always say, it's awesome that you're giving me that information. Makes everything more efficient if I know more about what you're thinking than me just shooting in the dark,
Exactly. Very much agree.
it's also just like, also no lie, I always kind of love those because they're so charming. Like,
Mhm.
it's very charming. It's just like, now I get to show this and the finished product. It's just like, it's fun. I wish more people would do it.
Yeah, usually I feel like any game maker who's kind of worth their salt has like gone through prototyping with like index cards or whatever, and they've drawn their very rough, like this is how the layout's gonna be or whatever with the stick figures, and so.
Yeah, it's just, how else are you able to just like process how it's supposed to look in the end if you don't have any just like super rough basic to work off of? You gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, have you ever seen like one of those prototypes that are just like on YouTube from like a very early version of a game where they're just using primitive shapes to just show what the protagonist is supposed to be?
Yeah,
It's kind of like that.
yeah. Question for you guys too is, when you're working on either comics or games, like specifically for the art regards, like, do you change your process any to like cater more towards either industry, I guess?
That's a good question. I guess the job would require the process, right? And it also, clients are all different. Some clients
Sure.
are super loose and just, hey, do whatever, and then others want to be dialed in on every step. So I guess so the short answer is job versus client, so.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been lucky with the Jason Anarchy, who does the casual card games. He's kind of like the clients y'all are talking about, where he'll send me a rough draft, a rough drawing, and have a very clear outline of what he wants. And I don't think he's ever tweaked a drawing that I sent him. I mean, I've only done a few games for him, but he's like, that's great, that's perfect. I think he works with a lot of different artists, so I think he's learned to speak a language and just maybe have like a healthy bar, and knowing that like this game is made out of hundreds of illustrations, and so like maybe one illustration isn't going to like make or break it, so it's like the collective of it. Like
A lot of overlap with comics in that way, where it's just like you get the one panel that doesn't look quite right.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because a lot of times, especially with comics, I mean, you spend like a millisecond reading it, Now, I think it might be different in like a rule book because you're like staring at the page and you have this illustration and you might pour over it a little bit more, right?
Yeah, well, it's just like, if it's a splash page, then it's just gonna get that little bit of extra attention because that's where the reader stops, but otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see, what's the next? Does anyone have any questions at this point? Yes.
So, like if you're working on Lancer or like GCC or like something that has previously existing art, do you look at a lot of, like from other artists, do you look at a lot of, like, did you spend a lot of time looking at the existing Lancer art? Did you spend a lot of time looking at, you mentioned old school D&D as like an influence on you. Like, do you go back and look at those?
Oh yeah, the Monster Manual and Fiend Folder are within grasping distance. So if I'm ever stuck, I just pull one down and
I mean,
start
like,
looking.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, good.
Okay, like 100%, I absolutely do pull from the existing art to just like kind of guide what the aesthetic of the new stuff's gonna be. Just because, like, honestly, it's just like, well, there's a template right there. Why not take some inspiration from it and then take your own twist on it? It helps just like give a guideline.
Do you feel restricted by that at all, or is it kind of nice to have that guideline? Like,
I feel like it's nice personally, but it's just like, it's mostly just like, I feel like I'm lucky because I do gel with the Lancer, just like art direction in general. I just like it, so.
I mean, everything's been done, right? I mean, everybody's riffing on everybody else, so.
It's like, everyone's done it, like, everyone's done it in some form before, but now you get to put your own twist on it.
Yeah, I've always found that kind of like trying to cater some of your work towards the established look can be very useful because what a lot of folks might not initially think is that like having constraints within whatever creative work you're doing can actually make you be even more creative because you have to like solve problems in a different way. So having it where there is that established look and even if your style isn't like exactly the same sort of thing, like if there's a version of your work that still fits within that, then you can really like hone in on that, and then it will inevitably, like people who love that game, they can see that and like often clock, oh, this is for that style of game or that system or something.
I mean, you're only constrained by the art director and the job. So if they let you go nuts, then you can go nuts.
Yeah.
This is a very small question, but related to that, can you provide some context for the Bebop and Rocksteady old school Eastman layer?
So that is one of my comics. Have that upstairs as well. It's a new bootleg comic of if Bebop and Rocksteady were part of the '80s New York hardcore punk scene.
Hell yeah.
I could imagine that being a great RPG.
Yeah. There is a indie RPG. I think it's called Alt NYC 88 or something like that. About a like alternate version of '80s New York with weird mutants. It's very like Ninja Turtles meets like Warriors, Escape from New York, and
Nice.
yeah, you're like I think one of your main items is skateboard or something.
Gotta get around.
Yeah.
Gotta get around.
Yes.
Well, just a comment, the lower right image there, it kind of has this like socialist realist image from like 1950s Soviet Union, poster about, towards the future or whatever, except for their fantasy characters.
It is exactly the
Where did this come from and what was it for? I mean, that's such a...
well, that piece in particular was for something I had been toying with that I ended up scrapping, but I've always been fascinated by those sorts of like propaganda posters from Soviet era, and as a leftist, politically leaning person anyway, and a huge fantasy nerd, it just like those two things were just already sitting in the back of my mind for who knows how long until eventually it popped in.
So there used to be a chain called Super Salad,
I
and
remember.
they had posters like this of people working on giant vegetables. It had
right,
more of
yeah.
like a works project
I remember
administration
those, yeah, yeah.
vibe, but it's not that different, but they didn't have anybody with like pointy ears.
Yeah. They should have.
I feel like that's a bit of a moral failing on their part.
Salad.
So, when I think of like book illustrations, it's Paul Kirby, the one that did all the Terry Pratchett stuff. There's a way that sort of like sets the tone and sets the stage for the reader. And there are these like Snoopy or Mickey Mouse, there are certain like shapes and characters where like as soon as it becomes, it's this thing that we all kind of see alive and moving. It's not just a line, there's no decoding. It's like you see Snoopy, that's Snoopy. And then especially from Eisner to the Silver Age, like comic books did a lot of like motion and acrobatics, and you see the motion even though it's a bunch of static pages. And on all these things, I imagine as an illustrator, you're making decisions to sort of fill in the blanks in your reader's imagination. But when you're doing game design, it's a situation where you have a handful of people usually, unless it's those new journaling, single-player role-playing, but you have a group of people and they're sort of like experiencing theater of the mind, and they're pulling from their other lives and whatever cartoons and comics come together. But like those illustrations, and sometimes just the little like quarter-page or 8-page illustrations, they're like touchstones, and they kind of like live in the background of this shared. So how does that change what you're trying to convey? Because you're not doing like Paul Kirby and say, here's the whole story. And I imagine you want action like a comic where it's like, oh, what's the next thing that happened, or how did we end up here? Yeah. How do you frame the notion?
I think I understand what you're kind of going for, and kind of to the point you made of filling in the blanks in people's imagination. I find for both TTRPG illustrations and comics, there's a nice sweet spot that you can kind of aim for of filling in the blanks, but also leaving blanks for them to fill, because as in the classic Understanding Comics talks about how the reader is filling in those like empty frames in between the panel gutters.
Yeah.
So you're trying to give that reader like the, I guess, most informed kind of main beats, so they can logically do that. And kind of to the same degree with like illustrating a new monster or something, like it's, I've found it's very good to add little details in there that if someone wants to engage with it like this amount, then they can really look at all those little things, and that might spark a new idea for how they're going to use that at their table, or a way for them to even like tweak whatever lore is written next to it to fit their setting or whatever.
It's like those illustrations in a TTRPG are essentially the starting gun. It's like this is what you think. This is like what you think of. It's essentially like a prompt of sorts. It's like it's the first impression they're going to get of whatever monster or whatever piece of equipment or what the character might look like, and then the players are going to take it from there. It's in implication. of sorts, of just like a greater, wider world that you're going to take place in. Comics, just like meanwhile, are just like a different kind of implication between panel to panel. Like, you can fill in the blank, but oftentimes it is more evocative to just like go from pose to pose, or just like beat to beat. And the biggest thing with comics that I find personally is just like, what do I want to imply and what do I want to leave to the reader's imagination? When I'm doing a TTRPG illustration, most of it's up to the reader's imagination, because they're only seeing that one illustration. So, well, there's the illustration. You can go from there. But with a comic, then it's just like, well, do I want to stretch this out? Do I want to go headlopper with it and just like do like 60 pages for an issue or something? Don't do this, by the way. I love headlopper, but don't do that much work for yourself. Oh boy, but it's cool.
Yeah, that's a great question, well put. I think the one example I think of is like, I think it's an old school Dungeon Master guide of like the party is stealing like a jewel from the eye. Yes,
First position.
everyone knows that one. It's like, the game is Dungeons and Dragons. It's not steal the idol from the gem from the idol's head, but like this is something that could happen in one of your adventures, and it's like, it's how does it get to that point is what is fun. Like, how does the party, do they knock out the guards? Do they sneak in and like, they're sacrilegious, they're gonna steal this, they don't care, they're not like, this isn't Lord of the Rings, it's not high adventure, they're scavenging, you know, sword and sorcery. So, it gives you keynotes of like what kind of a game you can have, and yeah.
I feel like that could be like a short RPG, steal the diamond from the idol's head.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
sure it's already been done.
Oh,
Pan
100%.
flipper.
Yeah. Actually, I'm sure it's on like itch.io,
Right now.
but like, have y'all sort of, your work has lived through what I consider we're in sort of a renaissance of like indie RPG creation. Like, how did y'all notice that happening, and what do you attribute to that, and how were you swept along? Care to share? You mentioned
Well, the
specifically
internet, for sure, the fact that there's not the gatekeepers that have to tell you what can be published. Like, everybody can self-publish now, relatively easy, and with crowdsourcing, I mean, you just have an idea and go for it. And if you get enough, well, I mean, even if you don't get enough interest, you can just do it yourself. You know.
So whenever you sort of felt the turn, you said you had to like pivot your own work, but then like people kind of started coming back around to your style you already had. What was that moment like? And
Well, I was working the video games, and I was very unhappy, and I told my wife that I needed to get out of corporate art, or I was just going to quit doing art in general. And so she was awesome, and she just let me quit this big job and take a plunge, you know, or leap of faith, basically. And it's kind of worked out. But I just started doing shows and showing my work around, and then you know, I started picking up clients here and there, and it just kind of worked out. So
The biggest motivator really is just like loving the craft.
Something I've seen, especially lately, like obviously the kind of early OSR, like retro clone sort of scene has been around for a while now, but lots of the indie space has exploded the past few years, partially for internet, and there's actually like more people talking about it. There's whole YouTube channels dedicated to just reviewing these smaller independent folks. And I definitely noticed a big influx after the whole OGL debacle with Wizards of the Coast. If you don't know it, we don't have time to summarize it, but it was a mess. And like, I certainly saw plenty of people, myself included, who were making products before that and doing very successful for themselves. But I feel like I've seen much more, at least visible, like work since then, And I mean, particularly I know from like trends with like lots of crowdfunding campaigns that it's now, instead of people making things like solely for 5th edition D&D, they're making things for every possible system you could imagine, making brand new systems that are all doing gangbusters, and all of those other sorts of Kickstarters and other crowdfunding is now surpassing anything for 5th edition or Pathfinder and like the traditional like big time folks in amount of profits that they're all getting individually and total.
The environment is frankly just like more interesting and rich right now.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, more to your point, it is a renaissance it is a renaissance of things. Just like we're getting all kinds of interesting and just like weird systems, and that's kind of great. I love that.
I feel like the pandemic was was a huge hit for Dungeons and Dragons, and then once people got into Dungeons and Dragons, they're like, well, I want to play another genre, and so it kind of just spiraled out of control from there. Like people, I feel like there was a lot of people playing D&D before, but there was at the pandemic, there was people that I didn't even know would be interested in D&D, and they're like calling me up like, so tell me about Dungeons and Dragons. So it's kind of weird.
I feel like Stranger Things really helped
No, and
out a lot.
yeah. Stranger Things, and then the pandemic, and it was crazy.
But the real documentary is The Guild.
Oh, okay.
It's like The Office is a documentary of the corporate workplace. The Guild is
Oh, my God, I have not actually watched that. You probably should. But boy, I don't think a game like Fist would be like getting the kind of attention that it has, like if it wasn't for things like the pandemic, as you mentioned, or just like the whole OGL nonsense, and just D&D being kind of a gateway to people being interested in other systems. It's really neat. There's like Mothership or Fist or just like
Shadow Dark's huge.
Yeah.
oh yeah, or Lancer, which is based on giant robots. What's my personal interest? What am I talking about? Anyway.
Yeah, I think something that probably helps too is that like D&D is one of the like crunchier like rule sets. There's a lot to it, a lot to learn with it, and I think it being a gateway, but then also having so many more rules, like a lot of people who, if they don't immediately drive with that, they want something a bit more simple. All of these other indie publishers and creators are leading that charge in things that are easier to learn and maybe more to someone's like style, or like, it can even be just like such arbitrary things as like, well, I like this size of dice better than this one.
I don't feel like playing a fantasy game. I want to play as the Skull's parasite unit. Well, I'm going to play Fist now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about constraints earlier, and one of the things I like about that the indie RPG community has brought up is maybe as an extreme reaction to all the rules in D&D is like a one-page RPG, putting everything that you need to play a game on one page. And so I had fun with that recently, where it was the winner of the shortest game award called Cool Hacker Vampires. And so it was open source. You could mod it however you wanted. And so I decided to mod it where you're an egg and you have 1 hit point. And so whatever happens to you, it's fatal. But you might hatch into something, who knows? And so what kind of egg are you? And so you roll up your egg, And so I worked with a comic artist, and you know, he drew the eggs, and it's called like Out of the Frying Pan into the Fire, and like it has all the elements of like your RPG. You're playing something that could die, and how will you live?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I think maybe the like most popular of the like one page is Honey Heist.
Yes.
I played
where,
that before.
Yeah, you're a bunch of bears trying to get into a human convention to steal honey, and you only have 2 stats of, I think, bear and humanity.
Hats.
Something.
Yeah.
Your hats are a big
Bear
thing.
and con.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's incredible. It's so goofy.
If you,
Go ahead.
Yes, question?
You know, one thing that actually got me into Tabletop like Invincible is one was tie-in, like there's a tie-in Tabletop RPG for Sunless Skies, which is like a game where it's sort of like a Victorian era like Eldritch horror space sim, but like they tie-in RPG where there's no roles. It's all done through text, through talking and negotiation, and it's like again, it's one of those one-page things. It's really fun.
Yeah, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
One of the most brilliant games I ever played, and I just drew a blank on the name, but it's all based, the whole thing's based on playing with a Jenga.
Dread.
There you
my
go.
God.
Yeah. And everything you start off is very simple, and by the, you know, the climax of the adventure, it's, you know, you got the thing, and if it drops, then catastrophe.
Yeah, I think both of those examples, like, also are good examples of how games that have been around for so long, like D&D, that they don't like to change too much things, because there's like the golden goose kind of aspects of that. So like they keep around a lot of the equipment, even if it's not useful in this version of the system anymore, just because the old grognards might get upset, kind of thing. But with all these other RPGs, you get to actually experiment and try new things. Recently started playing a game that uses tarot cards instead of dice. I've seen like tons of other like strange, simple mechanics that I never would have even considered. That's kind of the joy of this indie scene.
they did try just like suddenly remembering that they did try changing D&D one time. It was called 4E, and it got people really mad. I'm still sad about 4E. They deserved better.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Got it.
Go ahead. Thank you. I just wanted to know if I believe you all have experience more in the art world. Does anyone here in the panel have experience also writing for a tabletop game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've designed my own system, and also like for the first few things that I did, it was sort of like monster manual-esque stuff. I was also writing all of the lore and like just fully crafting all of these creatures as well. But I've gone through lots of different iterations of like systems. Working on something else new that will probably take me many more years of figuring everything out. But yeah, it's a interesting thing to try to do, to figure out all the mechanics and like properly write all of that, and also like the setting or tone or any of that kind of stuff. Very different experience for me, at least, than
It's a whole different skill set, for sure.
yeah. And even like I write all of my comics as well, but totally different things. If I'm writing an issue of Zethia, I'm not having to think about the bell curve of 2d8 as opposed to 2d6 or something.
I do a smattering of writing, but I'm mainly doing art for hire. I'm always writing jokes, so if I'm doing my own stuff, it's doing the cartoon stuff. And I've got a file on my phone that I'm always adding jokes, so I'm always working on, is this funny? And then I'm like, there's a joke in there somewhere, and it's always game related, so I've got a huge, and every once in a while, I've only done like maybe 4 or 5 comics, but like I've got a list of like 150 jokes that I'm working on at any given time, and I'm like, okay, that could be funnier, and so, yeah.
I mostly just like, I have done some rules and just like some general, just like number stuff, but I am not gonna pretend I'm very competent with that. Like, numbers and just like the dice pools and all that are just like very, like, it is very hard for me to actually grasp that. But I know how a game is going to feel, or just like how a rule is making a game feel in the moment. So it's like, so again, I usually do the illustration bit, but I do sometimes do writing, and I do sometimes just like, intentionally kind of put in a rule that I'm not sure is actually going to work out, but I want to see how it's going to play out. Like for a supplement, like the Grim and Son supplement, my partner in crime for that project was having a really hard time coming up with core powers. So I just told her, hey, I'm just gonna make a bunch of core powers that I'm probably pretty sure are going to be kind of bad and just not work very well, but we need to test something. Because if we can test it and see how it feels to play, then we can adjust from there, because that's just how game design works. You keep on trying something out until it either works or it's just not fun and you remove it. And that's just iteration. It's interesting. It's really kind of not that different from any other art in that way, where you just have to see how it works in the work itself. But now you have other people involved.
Yeah, I similarly never would have expected that to be involved in all the like math of games, and that was this subject I struggled with the most in like middle school, high school, all that, and but oddly enough, once I started trying to design things and learning about, like dice probability and all of that kind of stuff, that was like, clearly that was what I should have been taught in math school, because finally it was starting to click in certain regards. But it is, it's a whole weird wheelhouse, because there's also so many different like schools of thought. Like I see people arguing online of like, how do you predict like this type of scenario versus this type of scenario with the same dice set or dice pool, and they're having completely different answers.
It turns out a 2d6 feels very different from a 1d12. Who could have guessed?
I have a little experience writing for there was this itch.io contest for like HeroQuest maps when they had that revival, and that was such a great formula, because the top half of the page is the map. It's like a dungeon crawl with a static map, and then you sort of plop down where the doors and stuff are, and the bottom half is just the quest description. And so it's like you're working within those constraints, but you do have to come up with these like little rules about like, okay, when I walk through this door, I'm gonna roll a 1d6 and see if I pop out another door. And it was just really great to see everyone's take on how to work within that constraint. And like, once you start adding enough custom rules to a game, you realize you're reinventing the game, so you might as well just make a whole new game. So like, all right, I'm gonna make a new game now. And so I think starting from an existing system and homebrewing it is a great place to start writing, and until you can fly on your own.
This also just like helps you understand, how does this change the game that I'm messing
Right.
with?
Yeah, it's like you need to know how to fix a car before you can build one.
Anyway, this is why I'm driving a Beamer off a cliff right now.
Yeah. Oh, you had a question?
Yeah, are there any games that you've worked on that there was some reason why it was your favorite, or is there a specific type of game or thing that you would be drawn to and be really interested in working on?
Interesting.
I haven't gotten to work on my favorite game ever. And my favorite game is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. That's my favorite. So,
One day.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I've only started to like really get my toes dipped into a lot of the OSR sort of stuff, which is definitely kind of in the direction I would love to do, go for a lot of like illustration work within TTRPGs. 'Cause I think a lot of my art I mean, I try to vary in style. Like this is very bright and kind of cartoony, goofy, but I have other stuff that is a lot more dark and could fit pretty well with OSR things. So I definitely would love to work on more of that. Like the Fireborg stuff I've done has already been a blast, and I would especially love to do something with Mothership. That's one of my favorite games.
I would personally, I do a whole lot of really bright colors, but I want to do something that's more horror oriented at some point. Like, that thing up there is from like a kind of a zine project I did just to see if I could do stuff with strictly black and white. But I want to do just a more lethal kind of, something like Morkborg-ish. Just like something that's very lethal, that's very OSR inspired, where it's just like, you're kind of expendable, and I want all the art to just imply that expendability, and also I just like the aesthetics of Morkborg. They really, it looks incredible. But it's just, I want to do a project where I get to draw characters and monsters that are just grimy and horrible. Just because like I do so much art that is so bright and saturated, and I like it. I like coloring my stuff like that, but I want to get grim. Take me out of my wheelhouse. Do something more interesting with it.
I gotta say, drawing mechs looks very difficult to me.
It is a little bit more difficult, but it's just like the same things that apply to drawing a decent character that implies just like a mech is essentially a character, right? When you think of like the Zaku from Mobile Suit Gundam, like what does it imply? It has the mono eye. It has a helmet that looks like a soldier's helmet. It has tubes that imply like a gas mask. It is a soldier. It is a grunt. It is a character unto itself. What does the Gundam itself look like? It looks like a samurai. It has swords that it pulls out from its back that kind of evoke the image of a katana. Like, these machines aren't just giant mechanical objects, they're characters. So it's like a matter of marrying the idea of just this is a machine that exists in the world. It is also a character that has its own personality. I mean, not literally, depending on the continuity. I mean, Witch from Mercury had, Gundam Ariel has a personality, but we're not talking about that. But it has a personality to it. It has an attitude to it. It might not literally have one, but it feels like it has one. It is walking on two legs. It is closer to human than any other vehicle we're driving right now. Probably for the best.
We got about maybe 6 minutes left. If anyone's got more questions, yes.
Are there any places you haven't seen RPG art go yet that you're excited to explore? So whether that's like mixed media or playing with like diegetic and non-diegetic or like disrupting the rules or anything like that?
Something I've seen a little bit. I'm blanking on the name of the book that I first saw this in. Is that it seems very interesting to me that there are some people that are making us what some you could argue is just TTRPG adjacent, like art and lore books, and they're not really tying themselves to one system or anything. There's the first book I saw, and it just has like these strange, very scratchy images, and all the like kind of text about them even seems kind of esoteric, and I think that could be an interesting thing, because that then like opens that to being used for any game that seems to fit that similar tone, and like then whoever's GMing for that game could kind of make it their own, because they can decide on what the mechanics of that character is. So I'm interested in seeing more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm kind of struggling to just think of what hasn't really been done before, just because like there's so many voices in these spaces now that a lot of different ideas have been taken in those mixed media directions. There's even like simulated tabletop, which is awesome. I love the fact that you could just go into Tabletop Simulator and play a Warhammer 40K or Warhammer Fantasy game without shelling out hundreds of dollars for models. But it's just very, like, the space has been filled with a lot of interesting and unique stuff. It's probably out there, but you just have to look. There's one system that uses, there's like a war game that uses Legos to create mechs. And part of the stats are tied to the specific Lego pieces you use. And that's, I wish I could remember the name of it, but it's just so.
Frame Zero.
Thank you. Thank you, yes. And that's awesome. It's the fact that it's just like, you can just pick up Legos you got lying around and make your own machines for it. Well, there you go, there's a model. But there's probably something that's not coming to mind.
I know the name of the system. It's called Tales and Scales. It's made by a children's book illustrator, but basically like you would have a boss battle and you would have to, you would actually draw to fight the boss. So there would be all these ways to like, it's more interactive, it's more creative. He encourages you to build like your dungeons out of like literally whatever you have laying around, Lego or whatever. Like to a purist, it might look really messy, but I think that's it's a total gateway for, you know, kids to play, or just like a different way to enjoy RPGs. You know, like draw a new head on this thing that would like, you know, make it die of embarrassment or something. I don't know.
There's an article in one of the old Dragon magazines where everybody got their own can of Play-Doh, and everybody made a creature, and you had like X amount of time, a half hour to make your creature, and then at the end of the time, you statted up your monster, and then you fought your monster.
Oh, I love that.
That sounds awesome.
That'd be great. Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
So we had one more question, probably.
Yeah, so it seems like, you know, a lot of like the art that you do around like tabletop role-playing game stuff, that's where like source books and materials for the game, right? Do you like also dabble in art, the kind of art that you use like during like the playing of the game itself, like battle maps, minis, that kind of thing, character sheets? I guess there is sort of.
I definitely do.
I've done concept work for miniature stuff, but not my artwork, and has been used for that, but
Yeah, I haven't done any of that outside of, say, like my own like groups sort of thing, but I would love to do things like that. Although the Red Bart's Knavelry book that I did that's for Pirateburg, the writer wanted to design part of that to be able to hand to the players as a diegetic like book that exists in the world of the fiction, that since all of those ships in there are supposed to be like talked about in like have legends about them, so somebody likely would have written that down in the game world, and they might stumble on it. So there is in a separate section that has all the like rules and everything that is compatible with the game, but then that first half is written and designed to potentially act as something that would work within the table that you're showing the players and the characters would be seeing.
Like every so often, I sometimes have done just like I haven't designed any 3D figures just because like that requires a very different skill set, just because like you have to think about how it's supposed to look in 3D space. But I have done like the occasional like little just like pop-up figure that you just put on the table just because like, and now it has to be readable at a small scale, so that's fun. So yeah.
Nice. Well, I guess that's about all the time we got for today, but thank you all for being here.
before everybody leaves, I just wanted to let you know that I am a host. I am putting together my own gaming convention in Round Rock in August. So gamers, we need gamers and GMs and game hosts and all that stuff. So come by my table and I'll give you some information.
You have that table upstairs?
Right
Yeah.
there.
We're on it.
Yeah.